Good morning to the world. We are beaming live and direct from Lagos, Nigeria, and this is Early Exchange on Souq News. How are you today? It's time again for another round of exchanges. Let values exchange and let money exchange from one country to another, because we are here to ensure that we have that interconnectivity across the globe. My name is Ayo Jimmy, and of course, I am not alone. Good morning, Blessing.
Good morning, Ayer. Thank you for joining us on Early Exchange with business, economic, and development matters on our minds. They are going to be the focus of the show today. The first point is for us to get updated on current happenings, and Ola Oluwawe is here to do that. Let's go for now to join Ola. Good morning.
Good morning. It's always a pleasure to give you the news on the Early Exchange on Souq News. And thank you very much, Blessing AJ. Good morning, Ayo Jimmy. Good morning to you out there as well. I am Ola Oluwawe, as they mentioned. New day, new updates. So welcome to the Morning Update Studio. The most important development from all around the world comes your way right away. So stay tuned. Welcome to the morning news update on Early Exchange. I am Ola Oluwawe. Let's start from Nigeria. President Bola Tinubu has promised to be more liberal in terms of access to information to ensure transparency. The newly appointed special advisor to the president on media and publicity, Ajuri Ngelale, reiterated this commitment during a conversation with reporters at the presidential villa in Abuja. According to Ajuri, President Tinubu has given clear instructions that no public official should belittle or disregard the Nigerian people, emphasizing the need for respectful and considerate communication with the citizens. Furthermore, the administration aims to promote transparency and accountability by adopting an unprecedented approach of opening up the presidential villa to the public, thereby ensuring a greater level of openness in governance. And away from that, Nigeria's Senate President Godswill Akpabio has unveiled 19 more ministerial nominees submitted by President Bola Tinubu. The new list includes former Governor Gbega Oyetola from Osun State, Samuel Lalong from Plateau State, Bello Matawalle from Zamfara State, and Atiku Bagudu from Kebbi, among others. Prior to this, the Chief of Staff to the President, Femi Gbajabiamila, had submitted a supplementary ministerial list to the Senate. The list was handed over to Senate President Godswill Akpabio at about 3:17 yesterday afternoon after Dele Alaki, Lateef Fagbemi, Mohammed Idris, Ali Pati, and Doris Uzoka and others were screened as ministerial nominees. Now the Nigerian Medical Association NMA Lagos State chapter is demanding for justice and improvement in hospital facilities following the unfortunate incident involving the passing of Dr. Vairi Daso, a medical house officer who died after being trapped in an elevator at the General Hospital in Lagos for over 40 minutes. In response to this tragedy, the NMA has called for an immediate and unbiased investigation into the circumstances surrounding the incident in order to ensure that those responsible are held accountable. Additionally, the NMA has declared a 5-day statewide mourning period in honor of their deceased colleague, showing deep respect for her memory. During this period, doctors in 3 government hospitals in the Lagos Island will embark on an indefinite strike, while activities in other government hospitals will be scaled down. According to a press statement signed by State Chairman Dr. Benjamin Ulujebutu and Secretary Ismail Ajibor. Yesterday, the association calls for improvement in hospital infrastructure, particularly focusing on the house officers' quarters at the island. And urgent attention needs to be given to repairs at other facilities in government hospitals. Now, the World Football Governing Body, FIFA, will now pay deposit prize money directly into the accounts of the victorious players in the ongoing Women's World Cup in Australia, New Zealand. The decision comes after Nigeria's Super Falcons faced issues with unpaid allowances In a viral video on social media, FIFA Secretary General Fatima Samora confirmed the policy change, attributing it to the unresolved per diem and bonus payment owed to some Nigerian players for the past 2 years. The situation caused significant unrest among the Super Falcons players, who even contemplated boycotting training to protest their unpaid bonuses. According to the previous announcement by FIFA, each player participating in the World Cup group stage would receive $30,000, and this amount would then increase to $60,000 in the second round of the competition. And moving to more African countries, major cities in Niger are experiencing rolling blackouts after the recent coup in the country. The power shortages are a result of Nigeria cutting off electricity supplies to its northern neighbor, as Niger relies heavily on Nigeria as its main supplier of electricity. The situation has led to power cuts in cities like Niamey, Maradi, and Zinda, with residents having electricity for only about an hour, a sharp downturn from about 5 hours daily outage. The power crisis comes in the wake of sanctions imposed by the West African trading bloc, ECOWAS, on Niger following the coup, although ECOWAS has not clarified whether the sanctions include electricity supplies. Meanwhile, ECOWAS defense chiefs have met in Nigeria to discuss the ongoing crisis in Niger. The situation has prompted European countries to evacuate their citizens from Niger amid growing concerns over the political instability in the region. The West African leaders have given the military junta in Niger a week to relinquish power, warning of possible military intervention if their demands are not met. Now, UK-based mining company Aterion plc has entered into a joint venture agreement with Rio Tinto Mining and Exploration Limited and Kinonga Mining Limited to explore lithium in Rwanda. The agreement, signed on August 1st, allows for exploration and development of lithium and related minerals at the HCK Joint Venture Project in Southern Province, Rwanda. The project covers 2,750 hectares and has 19 identified pegmatite zones with lithium, cesium, and tantalum. Rio Tinto has the option of investing $7.5 million in 2 stages to earn up to a 75% interest in the mineral exploration license. The demand for lithium has increased due to its crucial role in electric batteries, especially for electric vehicles, EVs. It is known as white gold for EVs and is also used in batteries for laptops, cell phones, as well as in the glass and ceramics industry. Also, Rwanda has imposed a curfew on non-essential services as part of its effort to reduce noise pollution. The government announced that non-essential services must close at 1 a.m. on working days and 2 a.m. on weekends, starting from September 1st, 2023. President Paul Kagame's administration has been cracking down on noise pollution, with police taking actions such as closing bars and confiscating equipment from entertainment venues. However, nightclub owners have expressed concern that these new restrictions will harm their businesses and find the measures to be regressive. This came barely a month after the government issued guidelines on noise pollution, setting a limit of 55 decibels for sound levels in commercial areas during nighttime. Away from that, the Kenyan government has ordered the cryptocurrency project WorldCoin to stop registering new users in the country due to data privacy concerns. WorldCoin, founded by US tech entrepreneur Sam Altman, offered free crypto tokens to people who agree to have their eyeballs scanned, saying the project will help verify human identity and explore the concept of universal basic income using a mechanism which is still unclear. However, the Ministry of Interior in Kenya has expressed concerns about how the biometric data was stored, offering money in exchange for data and having private companies handle vast amounts of data. Thousands of Kenyans had queued up at registration centers to get the currency worth about $49. But the Kenya Ministry of Interior, after shutting it down, says it has launched an investigation into WorldCoin's authenticity and legality. TikTok has been suspended in Senegal due to concerns that the platform is being used to disseminate hateful and subversive messages that threaten the country's stability, according to Minister of Communication Moussa Boka. The minister stated that TikTok has become a preferred network for individuals with malicious intent. The decision comes in the aftermath of the arrest of firebrand opposition politician Usman Sonko, who is facing various charges, including incitement to insurrection. Protests erupted in Ziguinchor, where Sonko served as the mayor, resulting in the death of 3 people. And in response to the situation, mobile data internet services were temporarily shut down and telecom companies were instructed to comply with the order. The suspension of TikTok and the temporary shutdown of mobile data internet aim to address concerns over the spread of harmful content and maintain stability in the country during this politically charged period. And away from Africa to the United Arab Emirates, the UAE's Ministry of Human Resources and Emiratization has explained the new rule about fixed-term contracts between employees and workers. Under the new labor law, all private sector employers must change their employees' contracts from unlimited to fixed term. However, the law doesn't set a specific time limit for this contract, allowing employers and workers to decide on the duration that works best for them. The deadline for companies to make this change is extended till December 31, 2023. Employers need to renew the work permit when it expires, and if the employment contract remains the same, there is no need to print a new one. The new law defines 12 types of work permits for citizens and expatriates in private sector establishments. It also outlines 9 situations in which an employment contract may be terminated, giving clear guidelines for employers on how to handle terminations fairly. The ministry also addressed concerns about unfair dismissal, saying if a worker makes a serious complaint to the ministry or files a true lawsuit against the employer, terminating the worker's service in response would be considered unfair or arbitrary. And in such cases, employers must provide fair compensation based on the type of work, damage, and length of service. The compensation should not exceed 3 months' salary based on the last salary received. These rules aim to protect both employers and workers in the United Arab Emirates labor market. Dubai Silicon Oasis DSO has introduced 14 smart pedestrian crossing systems powered by artificial intelligence AI. The system is designed to detect pedestrians, cyclists, and other vulnerable road users in real time. It uses behavioral prediction models to activate warning signs, lights, and traffic signal controllers to prevent potential conflicts with approaching vehicles. The implementation follows extensive testing and uses a high-speed 5G connection for data collection and remote operations. The system aims to enhance pedestrian safety and contribute to Dubai's smart city initiatives. Now to other parts of the world. In order to reduce internet addiction among children and teens in China, the Cyberspace Administration of China, CSC, has proposed a new set of regulations that would prohibit individuals under the age of 18 from accessing the internet on mobile devices at night and early in the morning between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. Also under this tiered system, daily smartphone for children under 8 years old will be limited to a maximum of 40 minutes, and for 16 and 17-year-olds, a maximum of 2 hours. While parents will have the option to bypass these restrictions if they choose, the CSA intends these rules to improve the internet's positive impact, foster a favorable online environment, and address the issue of internet addiction among minors. The Chinese government's move is part of its broader regulatory oversight of the technology sector, reflecting concerns about the potential risks posed by digital technology to the well-being of young people. Now, a study conducted by researchers at Lund University in Sweden has suggested that artificial intelligence AI can safely read breast cancer screening images. The study found that AI, when used in computer-aided detection, was able to spot cancer at a rate similar to 2 radiologists. The research involved more than 80,000 women from Sweden, and the AI-supported screening did not generate more false positives compared to the standard care. Although AI shows great promise in breast cancer screening, experts in the UK agree that more research is needed to fully determine its potential and cost effectiveness. The study highlights the potential of AI in assisting radiologists and addressing shortages of medical professionals in breast cancer screening programs. Now, pop star Lizzo is facing a lawsuit filed by 3 other former dancers who have accused her of sexually harassing them and creating a hostile work environment. The legal action includes allegations of sexual, religious, and racial harassment, as well as discrimination, assault, and false imprisonment. The former dancer Ariana Davis, Crystal Williams, and Noel Rodriguez claim that they were pressured into attending sex shows and interacting with other dancers while working with Lizzo and a production company, Big Girl Big Touring, that's the BGBT, between years 2021 and 2023. The case was filed in Los Angeles, and Lizzo, a dance captain, and BGBT have not publicly responded to the allegations. Recent research published by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in the United States has suggested that leprosy is endemic to Central Florida in the U.S. The state has seen an increased incidence of leprosy cases without traditional risk factors, leading to the conclusion that leprosy has become endemic in the southeastern U.S. The report found that Central Florida accounted for over 80% of reported cases in the state and almost a fifth of nationally reported cases. Leprosy is a neglected tropical disease that can lead to stigmatization and discrimination, and it is transmitted through droplets from the nose and mouth during prolonged close contact with an untreated patient. It underscores the need for healthcare authorities to be vigilant in identifying and managing cases to prevent further transmission and ensure public health safety. Also, this case emphasizes the significance of research and data analysis in understanding disease patterns and trends, enabling appropriate responses and interventions to be implemented. And that's the morning news update for today. I am Olaoluwa Awe. We'll continue to monitor this key business and economic development for you at Souq News. Meanwhile, stay tuned for the analysis on early exchange. The team is ready for you, so get ready.
Thank you, Olaoluwa, for the news update, and thank you for still staying tuned to Early Exchange. Okay, like she said, we are set for the analysis. And when I said we, I don't mean Blessing and I only. I'm talking about the three of us here on set. Idahosa Osamaze is right beside me. Don't forget, he is a Director of Policy and Research, Africa Development Studies Center. Good morning, Idahosa.
Yeah, good morning, Blessing. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, viewers.
Okay, we begin today from the home front, as always, where we have 19 more names of ministerial nominees sent to the National Assembly, and they are therefore, you know, they will start their screening sometime very soon. Okay, we have like 5 past governors there also, which still speaks to the place of experience in the selection process of the present administration. What's your take on that?
Well, now we're all at rest now because the constitutional provision of every state producing a minister has been fulfilled by the president. So, which means in the choice of this cabinet, no legal provision of laws are broken. So that's a plus on one side. Yes, as governors are here, we all know that there is this struggle between politics and economy here now. You have to balance up power. Be sure that while you are thinking about building the nation, which of course we cannot do in one day, you must also be thinking of how to sustain this power. So somehow you will need this same power block to be around you while drawing on their experiences to see how they can help drive the process.
And I also think that the president wants to stamp authority on the ministries because having been a governor of a state, you can fully enforce authority when you're a minister in charge of any ministry. So perhaps that's part of the reason why a lot of the nominees are past governors. So he wants to use the fact that they have experience, and these are people who will have the political will to actually implement policies and changes that
not necessarily
may need. You know, sometimes when you have maybe if a greyhound in a particular ministry, or sometimes you may find that it takes quite a while to get that balance. But these are people that are used to maybe administrating, making policies, and also enforcing the authority where it's necessary to ensure that that change happens. That's just the way I say it.
I think it's more of the contributions that this fellow made to the electoral success. That's actually the key consideration.
So would that be like a thing of conversation?
Yes, of course, certainly so. Certainly so, because when people work and they spend their resource, their time and their energy to push an agenda, you can't just throw them by the side and then go and bring people from the private sector and say, come around the whole show. That will not be very, very right thing to do.
Okay, the names are there and the screening will proceed, and we can only wait for them to start work. I mean, after allocation of portfolios, then we'll see. We'll come back to that discussion at some other time and judge their effectiveness.
But you see, it's not really about the person.
Then what is it about?
Like we all know, everything boils down on leadership. On a man who can mobilize a team to deliver. Yes, you could have a star-studded team. And if your coach is not strategic and has not the right approach to the game, you could still lose a match.
Yeah, definitely.
So, you see, the ability of the leader, the president in this case, to be able to clearly set direction where he wants to go and put processes, structures, procedures in place that will define performance is what ultimately will determine the success of the administration. So it's not really what an individual will be able to contribute. You see, it's the president who is able to sit down and say, okay, well, this is where we are going. And is not going to fold his hand to just allow people to do things the way they want.
So by that definition, the president will be working more in the capacity of a coach, quote unquote.
Oh, yes.
Because you're just not setting the direction. You are even walking the road with them and say, okay, let's go this direction, let's go this direction. We can only wish them all the best, because it is when they perform well that we can actually rejoice as a people. And it's all about Nigeria and our collective, well-being. Okay.
And one of the duties of the coach is to know what role to give a player, where to place the player, and that talks about portfolio assignments.
Especially when it's strategic roles.
Yes, so we expect to see that the portfolios are strategically assigned to the nominees once they are screened and approved by the Senate. So
away from that, let's go to this unfortunate story of the death of a medical doctor serving with a Lagos hospital here, who unfortunately lost her life in an elevator crash. It crashed from the 10th floor down to the ground floor, and they couldn't really save her life. It's very, very unfortunate. But this speaks to the issue of HSE, health and safety issues in public spaces. You would assume that being an hospital environment, more attention will be paid to the safety concerns, because if you are not really safe within an hospital environment, then where else should you be safe? It's unfortunate that this is happening, and NMA Lagos State Chapter is demanding justice and improvements in hospital facilities. Now, apart from the HSE factor, if you look at the infrastructure in hospitals, you see, they are meant to be a place where you will be inspired to get well. But what you find in some hospitals is you get there, you leave there feeling more sick than you got there if you're not careful. How do you see this?
Well, I think the real problem is issues that have to do with maintenance culture. And I think it's not just about the government, even at individual and private levels. We have a very poor and weak maintenance culture. It's just like somebody who wakes up in the morning, take a car key, start the car and start driving. You don't even check whether the water is in the radiator. You don't want to check whether the oil is shorting or what it is. You just enter the car, you keep driving, and just expect that's how it's to function. So this is the way we approach life. We don't put a lot of emphasis in maintaining our infrastructure, our facilities, our equipment to ensure that they are in working order. You know, somehow it is difficult for somebody to even believe, how will a lift crash? It's difficult to believe. So which means definitely, of course, those who were supposed to be in charge of servicing that lift were not up and doing. And probably money that are meant for maintenance is cornered by somebody. Or, of course, probably no provision at all for the cost for maintenance. Lifts are supposed to be serviced regularly to ensure its functionality. So if we are seeing one crashing, it's something that is very difficult to absorb.
It's sad to know that sometimes it takes tragedy to happen before we get to do the right things. Like you mentioned, maintenance culture is one thing that is seriously lacking in this country. We wait for a tragedy to happen, and then everybody begins to ask what happens after investigation. Then you see that maintenance has been done on elevators, on every public building. But after a while, we forget and we fail to continue ensuring that maintenance takes place. And I think emergency response too, we should look at that. How long it takes for emergency response to come, and even creating emergency exits where maybe the elevator fails, people are trapped in it, or when something like this happens, what can someone who is in that elevator at that particular time do to send a signal that something has gone wrong? So these are things that we should begin to check, not just in the public space, but every place, even if the private working place, to ensure that the chances of hazards happening are limited. And even where it happens, escape routes or response time is very, very quick.
We can only express our heartfelt condolences to the family of the young lady who lost her life unjustly there, while we also, sympathize with the enemy for losing one of the talents there. Okay, away from that, let's go to sports now. The World Football Governing Body, FIFA, said it will now deposit money directly into the accounts of victorious players. Yes, we know that it has happened in the past that allowances of some players have not been paid, even up to 2 years after the tournament was over. Now, this move by FIFA stamps a mark of trust deficit on the handlers of sports in our country or in affected countries, because it is unthinkable that you would want patriotism from your citizens and they go out there to play, and for some reason, even when the government or FIFA releases the money, some people, because I do say the federal government will not come down to the street by itself. There's nobody called federal government. There are people handling different sectors. Some people still hold the allowances of players. There was the story of a Nigerian player that was washing his jersey over the internet. He was washing. They will give them jersey, one per match, and he was washing. This is not too good for the image of our country, or whichever member country is affected by this. What's your take on this?
Well, it's again what poverty has done to us. Poverty, I don't mean poverty of money. It's also the poverty of the mind. That a lot of us are not able to actually sit down to think and do things well. It's not FIFA is actually trying to also protect itself to ensure that the game of football get the best quality ever, and the people who are playing are adequately rewarded, and nobody is taking undue advantage of these players to shortchange them. It's not just about football at all, and I think this cut across, even in the entertainment industries. We see this in the business atmosphere where a lot of people are shortchanged. This is speaking to our character as a people. And I've said this over and over, that, you see, until you get to a place, like they say in the Holy Book, righteousness is what exalts a nation. Sin brings reproach to a people. I think that's what FIFA has spoken to in this matter.
You took the words right out of my mouth. It's very, very shameful for us to see things like this happening, particularly at a national level. Money is meant for athletes, money meant for players, and then will be siphoned by the body that is supposed to be in charge of coordinating these athletes. So it's very shameful. But I like it that FIFA has chosen to be the big brother by stepping in and doing what is right. They've earned the money, so the money should go directly to them. That way you will encourage the right talent that should be there to be there, and also in the right frame of mind, because these things are distractions to them. After working, after putting effort into training, performing well, they get back, they're beginning to ask for their monies. Some of them don't get it, and even when they had to go for these competitions, it's a battle getting sponsorship from the governing body, whether it's for football or it's for athletics and all of that. So I think it's a right decision that FIFA has made. Now, moving on to Rwanda, the government has imposed a curfew on non-essential services as part of its efforts to reduce noise pollution. So the government, Rwanda government, has announced that non-essential services must close at 1 a.m. on working days and 2 a.m. on weekends, starting from September 1st. So though police have taken action such as closing bars and confiscating equipment from entertainment venues, but the noise pollution had not gone down as the government is imposing sanctions. Noise pollution by several kinds of businesses. We find that happening too in Nigeria. Should we be looking at a curfew or some measure to reduce that? I know that there was a time, very recently too, that should be some months ago in Edo State, the governor had to issue a quick notice to some hotels, to some bars around the GRA because of the issue of noise pollution. It was really a problem.
Really, it's not a Rwandan issue alone, and it is not a Nigerian issue alone. I think it's a matter of personal culture. Because if you like, declare curfew from 10 a.m.
Even at 1 a.m., I think that's way too late.
See, even when you get home and you want to rest in some neighborhoods, there are different sources of noise that will deprive you of the right to rest. One, in a country where you don't have constant power supply from the public system, the noise of generators will make sure that you cannot sleep. But that is aside. There are those who believe that, okay, everybody is enjoying the music they are playing. I find it's unbelievable that you will be playing music from your own room and you leave your door open and you'll be blasting it to the maximum volume, assuming that everybody enjoys the song you are enjoying. This is noise pollution. Now, with respect to the Rwandan example, perhaps industrial noise pollution, maybe those who are not meant to be on duty, maybe their work is not really very essential to the running of the economy at that time of the night. I mean, power down your gen and go home and sleep. Well, it's a step in the right direction, but I know that more than placing curfew, we should speak more to the habits of people, address their mindset, and let them know that your own comfort should not, infringe on someone else's convenience.
Well, it's live and let's live. That is what it is. But I think what's fundamental here is also to see when people have less rest, of course, the level of productivity also go down. And of course, that's why you see government is also trying to create that balance where people can have adequate rest so that the following day they can actually be productive. If you go and club all through night and you wake up in the Monday morning and you're supposed to be going to work, your productivity level has to be very low. So, and I think there's a need for governments across the world to actually put some restrictions so that we can have this balance and then, of course, raise the bar in terms of productivity of the individuals.
Yeah, it's also sensitization would also help because normally when you have a bar or a lounge, these things are supposed to be indoor. So you have like you make it in the way in the construction that noise doesn't go out or the sound doesn't go out. Even if it goes out, it's at minimal level. But these days we're beginning to have bars outdoor, and so the music is blasting so loudly, and it's really become a problem to those who live around them. And even for people who are in residential buildings, is a problem. When you have parties, it's assumed that, oh, it's a party, I'm celebrating, I should have the right to close the road, I should have the right to play music for as long as I want, and it should be very, very loud. So sensitizing people and also educating them to respect the rights of other persons, being that once you're out of your house, in fact, even within your house, you should consider that it's a social space too.
Okay.
Other persons have a right to enjoy.
There's another
less
dimension to this particular restriction. You see, because in a few years, Rwanda has opened up and has become a tourist destination. Now, you need to create that ecosystem and a friendly atmosphere, especially for Europeans who are noise averse.
Yes, essentially.
Yes, to actually find comfort in coming to Rwanda. And this is very strategic, and I think the President Paul Kagame has done a lot of some of these strategic issues to actually create that eco-friendly tourist environment in Rwanda. He promotes sustainability in terms of the use and reuse, for example, of waste and everything. And you know, pollution is either from waste or from noise. So he has dealt seriously with this aspect and now also taking aspect. And of course, this will really encourage foreigners to actually come into Rwanda, knowing that the city is serene, and then of course people can have real rest if they come to rest in that environment.
Real rest is needed for you to concentrate on your business and concentrate on the job that you're doing, because when you sleep, you should have quality sleep. Let's take a break and return to look at tariff, and we'll look at global trade and tariff after this time.
Thank you for staying tuned to Early Exchange on Souq News. Like Blessing did mention before we went on that short break, we're taking a look at global trade and tariffs. Of course, no country exists in isolation. The principle of comparative cost advantage still thrives up till today. We are still, some people say trade by barter is dead. I say it is not dead. Countries are still exchanging goods with other countries for their own goods. What you are good at, you produce. What others are good at, they produce, and you exchange. But tariff now plays a critical role in this global trade. And what are tariffs, and what roles do they play? Do they play in global trade? Can they be used as a tool of, weaponization? Can tariff be weaponized against other countries? These and many more we will come back and look at. But then let's look at a report first and foremost. Then I will share in the discussion fully. Let's have that report on tariff and global trade.
The tariff plan is an integral aspect of global trade that involves imposing taxes or duties on imported goods and services. These tariffs serve multiple functions, from protecting domestic industries to generating revenue for governments. We delve into the world of tariffs and their influence on the global trade landscape, investigating their effect on economies, industries, and consumers across the globe. The importation and exportation of goods and services has attracted taxes and levies, which can be referred to as tariffs, imposed by governments as a tool to regulate international trade. Governments of various countries utilize tariffs as part of their trade policies, as different nations implement tariffs on imports and export based on their economic and political interests. Tariffs are typically imposed in response to economic or political conditions, including the desire to protect vulnerable domestic industries or to address perceived unfair trade practices. Notably, tariffs have a widespread impact on global trade, influencing the flow of goods and services across borders and affecting various industries in different countries. The tariff system remains a double-edged sword in the realm of global trade. While it is employed to protect domestic interests and generate revenue, it has also the potential to ignite trade conflict and hinder economic growth. Striking a balance between safeguarding domestic industries and promoting open trade is paramount for sustainable global economic development. Despite the intended purpose for a positive far-reaching effect on the global trade landscape, imposition of tariff as a policy instrument is not without its challenges, as it could spark trade tensions, retaliation, and conflicts among nations. Potential trade wars that may have detrimental effects on the global economy are a possible spin-off. These challenges also affect lower-income households, as higher tariffs on imports translate to increased prices for consumers, affecting those spending a large portion of their income on essential goods. Also, trade protectionism through tariffs can hinder economic growth by limiting access to foreign markets, reducing trade volumes, and impeding opportunities for international collaborations. To mitigate these potential negative consequences and allow the positive intention to come alive, World Trade Organization (WTO) has been in the forefront in negotiating tariff reduction agreements among member countries, fostering fair and open global trade. Initiatives like the WTO and bilateral trade agreements offer pathways to facilitate fair and mutually beneficial trade relations among nations. As the world continues to interconnect, understanding the implications of tariffs on global trade becomes indispensable for policymakers, businesses, and consumers alike. Grace Komolafe, Souq News.
Thanks, Grace. So from that report and what I said earlier, you got to know that global trade refers to the exchange of goods and services across international borders. This is controlled by a set of rules and regulations, including tariff, which is a tax imposed on imported goods. Now, there are different types of tariff system. We'll be looking at the types of tariff system and how they affect global trade. Idausa, Osama, let's look at the types of tariff system. What are they, and what role do they play in global trade?
Well, looking at tariffs, there are various ways country puts duties, custom charges, and goods that are coming into your country. And one of the reasons why, of course, tariffs are placed on goods that are coming to your countries is to see that, of course, it's either you are facilitating trade or that you are restricting trade. In which case, it's either you want to ensure that your home industries are given chance to breathe, or that you are trying to become like a market hub for every kind of product. Like people say, oh, you make like your nation to become a dumping ground. So country as imposes tariffs, that is charges, which is export duty that is placed on goods that are not manufactured in your country that you have to source abroad. But of course, countries do it different ways. Some people high, some people tariffs are low. And of course, it depends on the strategy of the country that will determine what rate that you give to tariffs. But you see, in a globalized world where everybody is asking that the world barriers or walls are pulled down to facilitate trade, you find that you're supposed to be dealing with poverty issue, especially in Africa, whose share of world trade stands only at 3% of global trade. Now, the more tariff you put on goods that are coming into your country is actually increasing the level of poverty in your land, because the goods become more expensive and get out of the reach of the disposable income of the people who work in your clime. So even the affordability become a huge crisis. And this is what, of course, is creating the whole lot of social crisis we are facing, the economic crisis we face, even the political issues that come, is because prices of goods are on the rooftop and people cannot afford them.
Okay, in your opening, submission now, you did mention the fact that you either decide as a country to promote local production or to, probably lower tariffs and allow, goods to come into your country. But you also said that African leaders should, be mindful of the tariff they place on goods coming in because they make prices so. I would have thought that that should be a step in the right direction to promote local manufacturing, because if we allow these goods to come into the country, like you said, how do we promote our local manufacturing?
You see, I like the way you use the word trade by barter. Of course, using it in the economic sense that, of course, what you don't have, you change for another. And the new way of doing trade by barter in the world today is that you trade in things where you have comparative cost advantage. And what are the things that will facilitate your comparative cost advantage on a particular sector? Is your capacity, the infrastructure you have. You look at the competencies of the people. So if you don't have people, you don't have structures, the infrastructures are not there, and then you want to produce it, the cost of production will be higher than what will come from the outside. Now also, you don't also have capacity to pay living wage, such that your people can afford what you are producing. This is a real issue. So if you say, okay, produce local cars, so put high tariff on cars so that we can drive local cars. Now, what is the cost of producing a local car compared to the cost? And this is why you saw a lot of people still having issue. Even in one area we thought we have a comparative advantage, which is agriculture. The local rice is still more expensive than the foreign rice. So what are the dynamics? Improve seedlings. Because you find in the local place, the refining capacity is better off than what we can achieve here. Now, in terms of technology, they are better off. People are talking about precision agriculture. We are still talking about whole and cutlass agriculture. Now, so even if you produce for local consumption, your people can afford it. So both farmers and the consuming public are losing at both ends. So what you're doing, you are simply multiplying poverty. You see, what we should do is that look at certain specific sector where we feel we can maintain a comparative advantage in terms of pricing. Because the underlying word here is pricing, except that government is able to say it has enough money to subsidize the sales of this product such that people who you are giving 30,000 naira in a month will be able to afford it. So if you pay a man 30,000 and a bag of rice is 48,000, how does it survive?
He won't feed on grain all week long, all month long.
So let's look at harmonizing tariff. You talked about tariff being very high in some countries, and so it limits imports and makes the products more expensive in their countries. So in a country like that, how can they harmonize the tariff? Because I know the reason some countries impose high tariff is to encourage local manufacturing of those products. But I know that also that when you increase the tariff, the other country can retaliate by also adjusting theirs. So how do we come to that harmonization that is easy for you to have goods that you need, and it's also easy for you to send out goods that will generate export revenue for you?
You see, that's why, of course, a lot of globalists says, though globalization is still expanding and increasing, but international trade and multilateral systems that are supposed to facilitate globalization are under severe and serious attack. And there are real reasons why these attacks are coming. Now, you look at, for example, after the African Free Trade Area Agreement, what it's supposed to do is to harmonize tariff system across board Because as we speak, Africa trade more with the other part of the world than with itself. This is the real issue. But what's the critical issue here? The critical issue here is survival. And that's why you see that in recent time, the president of Nigeria has focused so much on Benin Republic. Because for every positive policy you make in Nigeria to drive our growth here, Benin makes a reverse policy. So if you are increasing tariff, Benin will be lowering their tariff. And that's why you see the conversation is on between Nigeria and Benin Republic, and so because that's the entry point of all imported and foreign goods into our country. Because they are taking advantage of your policy to grow their own economy. That's because ECOWAS treaty is actually not working. Now, what is important is that if you have a union that's functional, like you have the EU, where you have a flat or common systems in terms of tariff, you will find that it is easy for people to intertrade. But in terms of Africa, really, what are we going to sell to ourselves? That's a real challenge. Okay. That's why there's a difficulty in actually harmonizing tariff, because we have so little to trade with each other, because most of the manufactured goods are coming from the West and from Asia, and the only thing we ship out are all primary products.
Okay, let's still zone in on the after, because I found it quite surprising when you said that African countries trade more with other parts of the world than among themselves.
With themselves, yeah.
I would have thought it should make more sense to trade within ourselves because of geographical proximity to one another and the ease of doing business. What are the, apart from the fact that, okay, maybe we have not communicated the essence of promoting after, you know, from what you have actually said, what other challenges is after facing? Because the whole essence is to promote, you know, inter-Africa trades. And it's not happening.
No, but you see, it is the way economies are structured. And that's why I talked earlier on the law of comparative cost advantage in terms of competitiveness of your country. Now, what we produce in Nigeria that we can sell to Cotonou or Benin Republic? That's a key question.
Okay.
What would they sell to us? The maximum they sell to us is grain, and that's why we are shifting from one country to the other. Because we have no growth competence and capacity to really produce industrial goods that we can actually trade. And of course, take for example, if you look at the car automobile industry in Nigeria, you have some people producing here really. Now, how does the price compare in Benin? We can't force them to buy higher than they naturally should if we don't have the capacity to produce at a competitive cost that can compete with what is coming from either Asia or coming from the Western Europe. So what you see here is that we have not been able, and I think that's where the real critical issues are in terms of wealth creation, where our institutions, African institutions, universities, polytechnic, research institutions, need to really do more in terms of pioneering research in how to produce very cheap products like China is doing that can become a substitute to foreign and imported products and at a better price and probably a better quality that you can sell to your neighbors.
Talking about quality, besides tariff, there are non-tariff barriers which a country uses to regulate global trade as it concerns their own country. Now, what are those non-tariff barriers that Nigeria has that is even making the price of goods more expensive and is also not helping our economy that we need to revamp?
Well, regulation is one of it. In short, we are over-regulated. And that's why when you go, for example, into the Nigerian ports before and now, we're trying to do one-stop check. You have all manners of agencies on ground. Now, custom is there. Standard Organization of Nigeria is there. NAFDAC is there. Immigration is there. Now, when you look through these whole things, they become a barrier to free movement of trade and actually increase costs because everybody is having his charge on it. So, excessive regulation. Now, of course, there are also some countries that put quotas on some certain things, like we did in the last regime, where 14 items were placed on ban lists that, of course, you can't give foreign exchange to these kind of things. So, quotas are also known barriers. So, please, okay, this product, we don't want more than this to enter. We don't want this product to enter our economy. Now, there's also the rule of origin, which is people are asking, oh, yes, if you are going to sell this biro here, you have to prove that it was actually produced in Nigeria, that it's not coming from another country. Now, this is also, once these are enforced, it slows down trade. And these are the real big challenge. Now, another area which may not border on this is also the issues we spoke yesterday about logistics, about basic infrastructure. Now, in Europe, for example, the cost of logistics to GDP is about 7%. In South Africa, it's about 12%. In the rest of Africa, including Nigeria, it's about 30%. So you can imagine what this will do on the price of a good that is coming into your country. So when you don't have basic infrastructure, your port systems are not functioning well, your road systems are not good, you don't have rail system to move goods at cheaper costs, then of course you will have to have issues to deal with prices that will make you really not competitive. In short, I have a friend, an Indian friend, who came to do business in Nigeria some years ago, and he was telling me, and he said, look, I came to Nigeria, and all of a sudden, the truck that was taking my product from warehouse to Apapa port here, a place that is less than 3 kilometers, was charging me a sum of amounts. And he was asking, and he said, you see, I have to queue in Apapa for 3 days. For those 3 days, I'm not going to work. It's your goods I'm carrying. So you have to pay for the 3 days. Now, if that good is to be sold in Nigeria, who will pay for it? The final consumer will pay for it. So these are the real issues that face world trade, and this is what is making it absolutely very difficult for us to become competitive as a nation.
Okay. You did mention earlier that Africa's share of the world trade is about 3%.
Yes.
Which I find a bit low, not just a bit, critically low, essentially. Now, granted, we don't have the capacity to manufacture for now. I mean, manufacture at comparatively, cheaper prices to export. But then we know that African countries, a lot of them, export raw materials, which serve the countries in the West and other parts of the world. Why do we still have this low participation in global trade? What other challenges do we face that stop us from accessing the global trade beyond technical capabilities?
Yeah, but you see, that's what I'm saying. What you contribute is you are very poor as a country. You don't have capacity as a country. So your even consumption potentials are low. This is the real issue. So it's issues about wealth and wealth creation. And that's why I'm so really optimistic about the new regime, because it's not talking about poverty alleviation, it's not talking about fighting poverty, it's actually talking about wealth creation, which is the way Africans should go. And how are we going to be able to create wealth? It's not something that's going to happen overnight. You see, if you look at the what Ray Dalio called the 3 big circles, the circle of wealth, he talks about credit, he talks about debt, and he talks about productivity. And in his conception, he says that for a country to become productive, it starts with heavy investment in education. So you'll be able to build local capacity, local technologies that can do things cheaply for you. Now, once you don't have this capacity, you will still keep selling your raw products. For example, Côte d'Ivoire sells cocoa and makes about $2 billion annually. And in Europe, you sell the same chocolate and they are earning almost $10 billion from chocolate, which is made from cocoa. That's it. Same with petrol. We export crude. In 2021, the record is there. Nigerians sold about 22 billion in terms of crude and exported over 76 billion of refined petrol. You see the trade imbalance. So these are the things that are actually slowing down the trade in Africa. So we must invest in education so that we can grow capacity in technology and in the sciences so that we can do some of all these things ourselves and probably drag down costs. And then we can, of course, access international market. Because once you put the goods side by side, people are going to judge by its quality, by its functionality, not by the state of origin.
All right.
Okay, now let's look again at trade barriers. Now, one thing we've seen that certain trade barriers in Nigeria have resulted to is the issue of smuggling, and which was a very big one that was coming from Benin Republic. Some of the goods that were not coming easily through the Nigerian ports were coming through Benin Republic and they were smuggled. But recently, Nigeria reached an agreement with Benin Republic where a certain good is banned in Nigeria, it should also be banned in Benin Republic. Having bilateral agreements, should we be doing more of that to at least curtail that?
Well, the agreement can be signed on paper. How realistic its implementation will be is what the question is. You see, because what you're saying, if you're saying, Benin, don't trade with us, don't allow goods to come in through us. In short, as a matter of fact, that's the source of survival. How do you want them to survive? They can, in the spirit of the African or ECOWAS protocol, say yes to those kind of agreement. But implementation will really be difficult because look at the population side by side. So you can compare to see, do they have the market that can support themselves? So they actually need your market. And that's why I'm saying what is really important is for us to invest heavily in infrastructure. Things that are making costs to get to the rooftop is the thing that we should be working on. Now, you don't need to make any policy. You don't even need to go sign paper with anybody. If you go to the UAE, for example, the tariff on all car is 5% duty. That's coming into UAE. And compare that with Nigeria. And you're having a high tariff, which makes the cost of bringing a car into Nigeria to clear it exorbitant. Even your people want the cheap car.
Definitely.
So it's not about signing an agreement with another country, because it is your people who is patronizing.
That's why.
Now, what is the reason of patronizing? Is because if it comes through your port, the cost becomes exorbitant, and people can't afford it. What will be the use of keeping cars in your lot that nobody is able to buy? Because you are not even paying wages enough to your workers, for example, that you are thinking that they are having enough and they can actually afford that lifestyle. You have not provided alternative to private cars, like investing in transportation system, whether air, land, or the otherwise. These are the real issues that you talk about. The other day we were talking about even the airfare. price in dollars from Cotonou to Benin Republic to London is about $427. Why here is about 1,000 something dollars. Now, why the differences in the price? Regulation. So you see a lot of people who are actually traveling by road to Benin Republic to go and take a flight out of Nigeria. Some people go as far as Ghana to go take flight because the economic fundamentals here are not right. So those are the things we should work on. And once we can deal with those fundamentals, and then of course we can have moderate prices, it will just be a rule of competition. So if you are selling here at 1 naira, nobody will go and buy 1 naira 5 kobo at Benin Republic. Definitely. It's as simple as that.
Okay, permit me to take you back to the Ray Dalio's circles of wealth, because you explained how productivity can be boosted by investing massively in education.
Yes.
And when you invest in that, you're able to manufacture things locally. But you didn't say anything about the credit part of it and the debt part of it.
Okay.
You mentioned.
Okay.
So, touch on that.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, what Dalio said is that this circle move around, and this is what is moving poverty and wealth around. Now, what he's saying is that once a country gets to that threshold of saying, oh, we want to focus on education, what happens is that you boost productivity. And once you have boost productivity, what you will have much money in your hand. That's credit.
Okay.
Now, so once you have...
They are interconnected.
Oh, they are interconnected. You have plenty of credit. Money will be everywhere. Now, once you are seeing money everywhere, the chances that you want to overbloat your structure also become very high. So you see government putting hands here, putting hands here, putting hands here. You remember the days of the oil boom, and we're creating big infrastructure. We were raising people and creating employment in here without thinking that tomorrow there will be no oil. So what that leads you to, it leads you into debt.
Okay.
So you start to borrow to fund the new lifestyle. Now, as you're borrowing, you create a lot of problem. Because, of course, you are servicing your debt, just like we are currently servicing our debt at 96% of our total revenue. Now, what this means is that you now begin to see signs of internal crisis. And then, of course, as the internal crisis heightens, poverty will be rising. That's what you see in Nigeria today. So, you see poverty rising, flowing from the internal crisis. People can't go to farm. You call it Boko Haram. You are talking about kidnapping. You are talking about issue. And then, of course, you have some external issues. Like we are going to plunge our head into the Niger issue.
Yes.
Now, once you have those external crises, it compounds your problem and it brings you back to your nil.
All right. On a final
That's
note,
the cycle that Ray Dalio talked about.
Thank you for that clarification.
On a final note, still talking about global trade. Now, when people buy goods abroad, maybe Nigerians travel to other countries and they buy goods. Now, at the point of leaving, there's a tax refund on some of those items. But it seems like we don't have that same practice here for foreigners who come here, and maybe even when they have the receipt of their purchases here, we don't have that. Does that also result or can be classified as inequality in trade practices?
Well, I think value-added tax are tax that you pay locally for things that you buy within your country. So what other countries do is that once you are a tourist to the country and you pay and you buy goods, you are not supposed to pay VAT. Now, when you are moving out, of course, there are designated spots within the airport where you can actually show your receipts that you were a tourist and you're not resident, and that you have bought some goods that you're actually taking out. Then, of course, they will make refund for you. It's actually a law that is a general custom law everywhere in the world. Is here, but the ability for people to actually recover their VAT here is what I've not seen. But I think in other claims it's very easy because the systems are put in place and there are transparent processes that people can actually follow to submit their their receipts and they can get it. But you can try also with Nigeria when you have visitors, but it's not for locals.
Okay, that has been a very brilliant conversation about tariffs and global trade. We do hope that at some point Africa will be able to show up its share of participation in global trade. 3% is very, very low compared to the potentials that we have. Somebody said success is not what you have achieved, but what you achieved compared to the potential that is deposited inside of you. Like, Africa in particular has a lot of resources that should make us big players in the global market. We should get there one day.
We are ripe enough to leave potential to begin to be real.
Yes, it's the right time we show up the trade deficit so that we can at least, if not achieve a surplus in trade, we can have a balance of trade. And so with that, wrap up the discussion in this segment. We'll take a break and then we'll begin to look at port management. Stay tuned. right, now following quickly is sports management, because after talking about trade, global trade, there is one place that facilitates global trade, and that is sports, where every export will go out through and every import will come in through. So we're looking at port operations management. Now, the port is a source of revenue for every government because there are fees paid for goods that pass through the port. And it's also an easy means of transporting goods, and it's quite cheaper when you look at the alternative cargo, when you need to cargo a large quantity of goods compared to if you were to use maybe other sources like passing them through flights and all that. But there are some issues that bedevil port operations and is not allowing Nigeria to get all the gains that should come from having ports in Nigeria. Nigeria has 6 ports currently, and so let's look at how they run and how the services of the ports can be improved. So, looking at the way ports are run, now we usually have complaints from those who are clearing agents or even those who are importers of goods, talking about the long period, number of days it takes to clear goods, and even the access road leading to the port and leading goods out of the ports.
Well, I think a whole lot is happening in the port operations in Nigeria today. There's a whole lot of reform that is going on in that direction. Custom has fully automated its processes, which of course is making clearing becoming not as cumbersome as it is. The Apapa port is also getting a lot better today in terms of infrastructure. But of course, with the Lagos deep port operations kicking off, a lot is happening in that corridor that, of course, we will have something to smile in the near future.
Yes, we will go to the corridor and look at the benefits there, the opportunities there that abound. But before then, let's go over to our studios for a report on port operations in Nigeria. And when we're back, then we can go to that corridor and some other corridors around port management in Nigeria. So, watch the report.
Nigeria's maritime sector is a hidden gold mine, holding immense potential to spur economic growth. Experts believe that with proper exploration, it can become a crucial engine for the country's economic development, aligning with the federal government's diversification agenda amid global economic uncertainties. The Nigerian ports generate significant revenue, with the Nigerian Ports Authority (NPA) generating 144.6 billion naira, which is about $360 million for the government in 2021. NPA currently manages 6 major ports, including Lagos Port Complex and Tinkan Island Port in Lagos, Calabar Port, Delta Port in Warri, Rivers Port at Port Harcourt, and Onne Port. However, the seaport cargo operations face challenges such as port congestion, infrastructure, customs procedures, corruption, and bureaucracy. These issues hinder efficient maritime trade and negatively impact coastal nations' economies. Addressing these issues requires comprehensive understanding and exploring viable solutions to foster efficient and thriving ports nationwide. An example of progress is the new Lekki Deep Sea Port, which, according to the former Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, is expected to generate $201 billion in revenue for the federal and Lagos state governments through taxes, duties, and royalties over a 50-year concession period. This highlights the potential of a well-managed port to contribute significantly to the country's economic prosperity. Addressing port operations in Nigeria is paramount for sustainable growth and prosperity, and this requires a collective commitment from all stakeholders in the sector, ensuring efficient operations, simplified processes of loading and offloading, and the implementation of innovative solutions. Seun Ajayi, Souq News.
Yeah, that report by Seun Ajayi sets the tone for the discussion that we started earlier about port operation and port management. And I did say we will return to that corridor that you were talking about, because a lot of changes have actually taken place with the Nigerian port operations. Okay, we will be joined via Zoom shortly by one of our guests. And but then, before that, you were looking at developments in port operation. You spoke about automation. You spoke about the use of technology and so on and so forth. What other developments have taken place in that particular corridor, like you said?
Yeah, I mean that the real big challenge, you know, Blessing talk about 6 ports points in Nigeria, and the real volume of what is happening actually is happening at the Upper Port Income corridor, because I think that seems to be the most developed. And then there are other issues that are plaguing the other ports that are really making them not to be very functional. The issue of security and the other challenges that are also happening. But what I'm saying is that there's a whole lot of efforts in the last few years to see how to streamline the operation. And of course, that also led, of course, to the concessioning of the Oshodi-Apapa Road to Dangote, so that it could help reduce the pressure of a congestion that's always seen at the Apapa port. But of course, no doubt that the size of the port was actually hindering expansion itself. So that's why I'm saying the Lekki Deep Sea Port, which was recently commissioned, really has come as a big relief in that corridor in terms of the infrastructure put in place. And I think the only challenge around the Lekki Deep Sea Port now is accessibility to the port area. And once those road issues are taken care of, and I think a whole lot will happen even in the Lagos area of the port operation.
Now, talking about decongesting the ports, now there are other ports in Nigeria, but the busiest of them all is the Apapa port in Lagos. But what about redirecting the traffic to other ports to decongest the ports?
That's what I'm saying, is the sense of insecurity that is felt in those areas. Ship owners don't want to come. It's really not about diverting traffic. I remember some years ago when I was going to import machinery from China and I wanted it to land in the Warri port because it was closer, or even the Port Harcourt port. And the ship owner says, look, we can't get there because we are not sure of what's going to happen to our container. We are not sure of what's going to happen to our crew. So people are afraid, and this is why really, like we said in the other sessions, we must have to deal with some of our social issues to really lower down costs. Because there's no real reason for the over-congestion of the Apapa port. The only thing that is making the congestion here is because of the sense of security and safety. Now, once we can guarantee that across all the waterways around Nigeria, I think a whole lot of things can happen. You look at Ondo area, for example, we can find a deep sea port in Ondo area, and I think the government is also thinking toward that direction. Now, what is important for that operation is that you must create an environment of security so that those who are going to do business with you or for transshipment will find that their investment is safe and nobody is going to hijack their ship and be calling for ransom. So this is the real issues, and these are the things that need to happen.
Yeah, I do remember some of the government's intervention to clear the congestion around the Apapa corridor. And one of the key methods or innovations that were introduced was the truck e-call-up system, where you have to, use technology to call up truck that should come in at a particular point in time, as against everybody just lining up there. So you see people parking their trucks there for days, sleeping inside their trucks, even when they don't really have, when it's not yet their turn to, go and load or offload, as the case may be. And also, the issue of infrastructure, port infrastructure, it is being said that a lot of the infrastructure layout there needs upgrading to be in tune with modern practices and global best practices. We're still using them. Many of them are still the way they are. And you spoke earlier about our poor maintenance culture. Even if you are still latching on to old technology, if you have a proper maintenance culture, well, you may not be producing at optimum capacity, but then you will still feel a bit of relief as against abandoning them. If lifts
but you see, again, still speaking about infrastructure, it's just that I don't think that some of these things are rocket science or will need to reinvent the wheel, because there are people in other climes who have successfully deal with some of these issues. For example, if you go to the UAE, inspection is seamless. Inspection is seamless because technology is deployed on inspection. I don't know how many scanners we have in the port, because that's also the point of the delay. It's the delay that is causing the congestion. You see, if your good arrived today and inspection is done and the whole thing is evacuated in less than 48 hours, you will see congestion. So, but because we have to manually do some things, is what's actually creating this system. And you cannot also see that the total social infrastructure in our environment is also a problem, and which is actually making inspection very difficult. You see, if Nigerians are playing by the rule, it will be less cumbersome. Recently, we're talking about army intercepting a container load of ammunition. We've seen people who are concealing cannabis inside Indomie packs and the rest of it, just to ship. So you have to do your due diligence to ensure that your people are not taking forbidden fruits out of your territory to other country, which of course will strain relationship between you and those other country. So this is why we have to double check that create a delay that's actually resulting in the congestions that we face. So, but I think it's also to speak to our conscience, especially our businessmen, to play by the rule and to make seamless issues that a common scanner could just walk through a container and see what is in it, that what is actually containerized is declared.
What about policy implementation? Are there certain policies that in the implementation, they result also as a hurdle in the ease of port operations?
Yeah, that's why I said before now, you see different agencies trying to do a lot of things. You pay this year, you pay this year. So what customs are done now in their own operation, they have been able to actually simplify their operations and make it less cumbersome. So you can actually know what your tariffs are, and then of course just go online and then you fill in your numbers, and then of course in the portal you can clear from customs. Now the rest may be with the other agencies that they need to see things happen. And I think that's the area where of course that integration is heavily required at the moment, that we want to see a system where, whether it is the customs, immigrations, whether it's the Standard Organization of Nigeria, whether it's NAFDAC, that all their operations are on one desk, one stop, that you just come in there with your document, you can clear everything on one table, and then of course everybody is certain that what you're taking out of the port system is legal. Now, that will simplify the process, that will reduce the time and the costs that are associated with the delays that happen in port operation.
Okay, before you mentioned that, I was about asking you about the cost of clearance and how it impedes port operations, because people send you maybe a fairly used car from some other parts of the world, for instance, and maybe you bought it online by yourself and you see the cost there, but by the time it lands here in the country, it becomes very expensive for you to afford. The cost of clearance sometimes might be even more than the cost of purchase of the goods from coming in. But you mentioned the idea of the logistics issue, that we pay a lot of premium on logistics issue. How does this even affect port operations?
Now, I think the tariff or the duties on used car are determined by two factors. Don't forget that, of course, the world is also going a lot of moving out of this fossil fuel in terms of how to sustain the environment and get it really working. Now, what you see is that people are importing all manners of cars into the country. Now, what government need to do is to put a high restriction to restrict, the volume of these used cars that are coming into the environment. You see, because once you bring in used car into your environment, of course, you find that you are actually also destroying your environment, because you cannot really ascertain the status of those cars that are coming into the environment. So, you have cars that are smoking that nobody wants to use in Europe, and you ship them down to Africa. So, it creates a whole lot of environmental pollution and the issues that we are dealing with, which is the greenhouse gas issues. So, the government deliberately do this. We also spoke about the tariff just now. That somehow government also need to protect its own local manufacturer or industries to grow. And therefore, if you have capacity to grow some things at home, like we're currently advocating, when the president said in his broadcast some days back that, of course, Nigeria will invest in CNG cars, and we're saying, okay, please prioritize our local manufacturers so that, of course, we can encourage them to grow capacity, to grow competence in that direction. So if you have to encourage such people and facilitate their trade, you will need to put high tariff on equivalent cars that are coming from the outside. That's why you see that sometimes the cost of clearing is high. Now, of course, it's also in various categories in Nigeria.
Okay, so we mentioned infrastructure in passing. I know you've mentioned access roads, which is which is like the biggest of the infrastructure frameworks that should be put in place to ensure that we have easy access to the port, both to and fro. And of course, you mentioned insecurity, which is not maybe infrastructure, but then I'd like you to speak. In what specific terms do you think we can actually talk about infrastructure apart from access roads? What other infrastructure?
There are basic infrastructure where you need cranes to move these things. Even space, where you have to put your containers. They are all basic infrastructure that you need in the port. Now, even the harbor, where ship can berth. So you can have capacity to actually offload multiple ships at the same time. Now, these are the basic things that needs to be put in place. So there's a need for dredging of the port area so that you can create more harbors where ships can berth.
Okay. We're being joined on the conversation via Zoom by Dr. Wilson Aripo, who is the MD CEO of Seagates Global Service. Good morning, Dr. Wilson. Good morning, Dr. Wilson.
Good morning, sir. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear. Good to have you on the show today. We're taking a look at port operation in Nigeria, the challenges, the prospects, and the way to the next level. Let's speak about the core challenges in port operation in Nigeria. Speak to that.
Thank you very much for the opportunity and for having me on this program. It's a wonderful one to always espouse the things that bothers us in Nigeria most. In the maritime sector, which is one of the best means of transportation all over the world and the largest means of transportation actually of goods and property and even humans at any point in time. Nigeria being blessed with a maritime line that is as wide as from Lagos all the way to the Cameroons. You know, if it is properly announced, we've shouted on the top of our voices for so many years now, running, asking the same thing over and over again. The government in time past have tried their best, but of course you can see their best has never been good enough. You know, at the point in time, they went into concessions of the ports. We're hoping that with that will come the great redemption. Unfortunately, this is 2023, we're still experiencing difficulties at the port areas. Of course, as it's already common knowledge, Lagos port is really been very useful, but overused. One of the things I would like to say first and foremost, minus the other plethora problems, will be the fact that the Calabar port is sitting out there, not properly used, in fact, not even in use if you ask me. The attempt to dredge the port comes with too many excuses. The Port Harcourt port is there, the Warri port is there. Along the coastal lines, if all the ports are so well empowered, you have the congestions in our ports in Lagos. No matter how much you try to expand the Lagos port, you can't expand it beyond what it is right now. You know, it's been there years over and over and again. We've done a bit, we've gone on tours into the ports. We've brought in expert hands, companies that took over as supposed to be experts in other parts of the world. But there's no way Lagos will not be congested and the ports will become the referral point for all ports in Nigeria, because that's what you see, first point of landing. If goods are going to get all the way to the north, for instance, and the goods need to land in Lagos first, and it takes so much of time to clear the goods from Lagos port, you can be sure that the time wasting and these are different things altogether. But at least if they even spread capacity to other ports, the congestion we're talking about will drop immediately, drastically. Imagine the goods going to Makurdi, going to the north. If those goods land right in Calabar port, from Calabar it's a straight road all the way to Goja, to the north, to Makurdi, and off you go to Abuja and the rest of the parts of the country. If goods going to the east land at the Port Harcourt port, you know, if well taken care of, those goods going to the east without any political motives or any other ethnic coloration, you agree with me that more of the containers will be designated. You go here, you land this point, and it will make Lagos port less congested. And of course, other things that we all know. How much can you expand the roads? How good are the road networks? What is the intermodal system that other countries practice? Unfortunately, we go to other countries, we see things that work. We come back here to become like just an excursion without lessons learned. If you understand what I'm talking about, in the early post-independence years, you saw railways that left Papa ports, for instance, all the way. So that when goods arrived after clearing, of course, you can put your goods on the train right in the port and they move out immediately on rail tracks. That will decongest the roads. That will definitely not allow the system to be so clogged. It will be like a network. You know, like if you're driving on the road, simple driving on the road, and one vehicle breaks down or there's a pothole at a particular point where the road is dilapidated, you will discover how much traffic you have building up behind you. That's what happens when there's a disruption in the system.
All right.
So when
in
containers also
ensuring that
come,
capacity
and
is
if you
spread
know how it
across
works,
to other ports in Nigeria, what role will public-private partnership play?
Beautiful. We've had that, actually. How effective it is a different case. That's why the concession took place, because they were thinking of, you know, public-private partnership kind of scheme. And then you have what you call bonded terminals. You have dry inland terminals all over the place. You have big companies, well, people like Souq, sorry, okay, I shouldn't mention names, giving an advert or something, or people who got concession to handle the ports, for instance, those kind of things. When containers come, the clearance, but the bureaucracy behind the thing is the main thing. I don't know how much private involvement the government authorizes. As a matter of fact, at times they pay lip service to these things. And who does the clearing? The customs can be concession to private hands. They are there. And all their works must come on with all the shenanigans going on here and there. Sorry to say. They are doing a wonderful job, by the way. But there's no way you talk about Nigerian ports and not go there and see too many agencies that probably don't have jobs doing there. So when you talk of private partnership, there's a limit to which they can go. You know, if the government will allow that kind of thing, ports to be owned by individuals, competent hands who have gone not political games, not those they are going to give to because they are cronies, professionals indeed, who can own and run ports. But again, the danger I understand is in the security. You know, how many of these ports understand the ISPS code? Now, the security on its own is a big danger because the port of any nation is a gateway of that nation. So it will be very, very, very tricky when you talk of private partnership to the extent of letting them be the first handlers of those things. So when you get those dynamics, you know where it's coming from. So there's nothing that will beat competence. Take away corruption, take away some other things. It can run freely. So when private partnership comes in as they have come in, it's supposed to enhance productivity. The rate at which containers leave, you know, containers, for instance, leave the ships to the port, inspections take place, superintendents are allowed to come, look at things, you know, the different agencies that should screen this stuff. At a point, you know, we had at the port scanners. You know, you don't know how effective they are working right now. That's the malaise about this system we're talking about now. And the scanners were meant to ease inspection, to make it a lot easier and shorten the time. Till now, if you go to the port, you see containers that have been there for about a year plus, you know. And when there are issues on containers, what does the government do effectively to make sure it clears off immediately? I think those are the main issues about these things.
All right. Thank
corruption,
you. Thank you, Doctor. Before you joined us on the conversation, we spoke about single line clearance desk as one of the improvements that has taken place there, and the harmonization of clearing agencies, which is one of the improvements as well. Now, we know that technology plays a key role here. In what specific terms can technology enhance port operations?
Thank you very much. The issue of scanners, for instance, that's one arm of technology, for instance. We talk about those things. Now, if the AIS system is effectively put in place and governments, all agencies, they are hooked on to the same kind of device, it will be easier to monitor vessels before they come, monitor all the process. You know, you monitor the system, it's easier to come and not repeat the same process. Now, one thing is that technology is a wonderful thing. It helps to minimize, you know, reduce to a great extent the losses we're talking about here and the things we suffer. But like you also know, unfortunately, I pray for this country every time because what works in other climes, we seem to have difficulties making those things work here. Let me, without digressing, in Nigeria, when the terrorism started, contracts of heavy amounts of money was given out to install CCTV cameras all over Abuja and the rest of the places. Ask me how many of those cameras work today, whether they were even installed. That's my concern about those kind of things. You get to understand very well that Nigeria, for instance, is supposed to have 2 satellite, you know, stuff in space. When we needed it most for agricultural purposes and to try trace terrorism and tackle terrorism, we were told that our satellites too were missing. Until today, nobody is held accountable. And there's a conspiracy of silence from those who are involved. It's painful to want to talk about these kind of things without thinking you are going to hurt so many persons. But some of us we need to say it. So when we talk about technology, you can enumerate all the technologies you know in the world and put them in the front burner. We can talk about it. And that's one thing professionals will not love to do. You jaw, and there's no walk to the talk. It's a problem. We have to learn to, walk the talk. When we talk of technology and it's in place, who are those who sabotage it? Who are those who do not want it to work? That's the biggest question we have. When you rate Nigeria in the highest index of corruption, unfortunately, we keep doing that. We have to keep reiterating that, and we pray God to give us that Messiah who will end corruption totally. These things are not, it's not rocket science. It works in other climes.
All
Do
right,
you know
let's look
before your
at
goods come, leave
the
destination to
issue
come
of
in?
demurrage. You talked about some containers being at the port for up to a year. So at whose expense is that? And what is the policy around the payment of demurrage when it has to do with a delay that comes from port operations? So who's liable when it comes to payments?
That's the problem. That's the problem. Corruption will not let the system function properly. Sorry, I keep crying about corruption because some of us have been hurt in so many ways when it comes to issues about the ports. The truth is that the government will never take responsibility, and they will always dare you to go to court. And you begin to have this sense of feeling that the court may just waste your time. For instance, I've been owed monies into hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the companies are there. You go to court, and you go to court right now. The courts are on recess. Who's going to handle your issue until the courts come back from recess? For instance, I'm just saying that. So individuals are like that. And when the government is at fault, they want to wave it aside and they want to still apologize to them. The demurrage is always put onto the end user, the owners of the containers, especially even if they find out that it is not any fault of yours, they still will not take responsibility. Because in climes where it works, when they take responsibility, the head of that organization who causes that demurrage to be incurred will be suspended, fired, or at least, made to face the consequences. Because it's taxpayers' money that will be used to defray it if you are paying an individual from government's purse. So you always have this uphill task of not being able to get fairness or justice when anything happens. Of course, if the demurrage is incurred by you because of your own lapses and delay, which happens at times, you cannot begin to blame the government or anybody else. If, for instance, your container comes in and you have issues inside of the containers that are not declared, or false declaration, you can't blame the government even if they seize the container or delay the container until you get the things cleared. That you rightfully have to pay for the delay. But when the delay is not your part, like you said, harmonized everywhere. It should be one desk, operation. It stops there. You can pay from one point. You can fix all your things ahead of time. By the time you come, I'll tell you an issue. Like one salient issue.
Okay, Doctor.
We went to superintend some containers.
We are running out of time now. Let me just ask you, perhaps on the very last note. We know that there are two sides to port operation. On the one hand is infrastructure, technology, and the rest. On the other hand is the human resource, people who work there. Now, when you hear that illegal items are smuggled into a country, they did not just fly into the country. Sometimes there might be collaboration, between those who bring them in and those who are meant to oversee that such things never come in the first place. What role is the NPA meant to play in terms of education, training, and sensitization of the workforce to ensure that we promote the spirit of patriotism and safeguard lives and property with respect to the porosity of our ports? What is the role of education and training here?
There is no limit to, advocating for advocacy. For instance, because it's a continuous thing. Learning is continuous. That was what one great philosopher once said. And learning knows no ranks. As a matter of fact, I know that the Nigerian Port Authority, I've been privileged to train a bit some of their staff. One thing is to train people and they imbibe it. Another thing is to change the culture of the people. So you need to even get behavioral-based safety training. The National Regulatory Agency, it goes beyond the Nigerian port because the people who are in the Nigerian port authorities, for instance, are Nigerians and any other person they employ. And they have rules. If you read the policies and the rules of the NPA, you will fall in love with the NPA. They do a wonderful job, by the way. Onerous responsibilities they have. But of course, they are not without their lapses, And no matter how they try, if the system outside doesn't get really sanitized, you can be sure it will creep in. One bad apple amongst other apples will end up spoiling many other apples. So advocacy is one thing. If the system itself generally have a balance of itself, the roads that should be done are done. Containers that should not line up along the line are not lined up there. Things move when they should move. When you have a responsibility, for instance, if you have a boss who comes to work very early in the morning and expects you to come to work early in the morning, they will come to work early in the morning. In a place where I've gone to, you see that you go to the government office, they say some roads have been done. Somebody in the office signed off. A supervisor of work signed off that and gave a certificate of completion. But you go to the office, they tell you it has been done. You come to reality, it's not been done. Human beings are there. The same thing pervades the whole system, and that's the cry for me. At any point in time, it's a wonderful system we have, workable system, spread the technology,
Thank you very
infrastructure.
much,
We need to
Dr. Wilson
develop, of course, more
Aripo,
of it. I
for
don't want to
providing
reflect
us
the
great
issue of it.
insights on port operations
Definitely.
in Nigeria. Okay, wrapping this up, I think that adequate measures should be put into providing security for the waterways. We have the Navy, we have maritime police. Now, they should be adequately deployed and also equipped to provide security on the waterways so that we can have at least the Lagos port decongested, other ports that can be used where security issue is the concern that will be addressed. Let's go on a quick break and return to talk more. But before we return, Austin Okiri will give us business insights.
Business sustainability, where you have a shortage of liquidity, it's not going to kill the sustainability of the business. But business sustainability where you have insolvency, that business, in the state that it is not sustainable. People tend to think that the two are the same, liquidity and solvency. So they believe that if you are illiquid, then you are insolvent. There's nothing further from the truth. In the lifespan of a business, there are periods when the time before they receive money and the time that they need to spend money have a gap in between. And if you do not spend the money, even if you don't have it, maybe it's in receivable, which means people are owing you, you've given them 30 days to pay and it's not yet 30 days. And if you don't spend what you need to spend, you lose an opportunity. So what you do in that instance is to approach a bank and take an overdraft or a loan in order that you can have that money to spend whereas waiting for what you are owed to come back. In this situation, it is assumed that the assets of the business is much more than the liabilities of the business. It's just a temporary need of cash. That is liquidity, and that is the situation of blocking an illiquidity gap. This is very different from solvency and insolvency. When your company is solvent, it's sustainable because the sum total of the assets are more than the sum total of the liabilities. So you may be solvent and have a liquidity shortage. It's not as serious. But when you have a situation of illiquidity, it means that the sum total of your assets are smaller than the sum total of your liabilities. In plain English, the people that owe you in terms of amount is smaller than the people that you owe in terms of amounts, even if you sell everything, in which case, continually putting money into that business will be like pouring water in a basket, because it probably suggests that there is something fundamentally wrong with the business. Maybe the units of economics. Maybe you are producing so consistently at a cost higher than you are selling. Bringing in more money won't help you. PE money, bank money, your own money will not help you. You need to then go and look into the business and fix that fundamental flaw before you then seek to inject liquidity or funds. So when you look at business sustainability, you are protected in a situation of illiquidity if your assets, sum total, is more than your liabilities. On the other hand, if your liabilities is more than your assets, you have insolvency. And there is no point pouring water into a basket. Check whether your business is long-term sustainable, and if not, then fix it before you put in more money.
Thank you, Austin Okere, for the business insight there, and thank you for still staying tuned to Early Exchange on Souq News. There is the metaphor of a little boy who lived by the ocean and washed his hands in spittle. Then a passerby was asking, how can you live by the ocean and wash your hand with spit? And he said, though I have the ocean here with me, but the ocean is not clean enough for me to use, to wash my hand or to do anything. Now, that metaphor is not just belonging to the little boy. It is a metaphor that applies to a lot of developing nations, Nigeria inclusive. We are, in a context, a country of people who live by the ocean and still wash their hands in spittles. The challenge of clean water is huge. It's affecting businesses, it's affecting individuals, and that is why on this segment of the show, we're taking a look at clean water access as it affects development and business. But before then, let us go over to a short report that sets the stage for the discussion, and we'll be back in the studio with a water resource expert who will address this issue of access to clean water. Don't go away.
Among the vast expanse of our planet lies an essential lifeline that sustains us all, and that is water. From civilization to modernity, access to clean water and sanitation has been the heartbeat of human progress and prosperity. But it remains reality as millions still grapple with the dire lack of this fundamental necessity. In 2010, access to water and sanitation was recognized as a human right. Still, millions of people are reportedly faced with limitations in getting clean water due to population growth, climate change, and other factors. Globally, 844 million people are said not to be accessing clean drinking water, and 2.3 billion people lack basic sanitation facilities like latrines, a situation that elicits emotional responses from Nigerians.
We have problem with water. I would say where I am living, my environment here in Lagos, and I also see that many environments in Lagos here also face the same challenge of water. Because you go to some houses, you see people dragging water from either a borehole or from a tap to a house. Okay, so I think a lot of people face it, particularly for myself. The house where I'm living, I have water borehole in the house. So we don't drink it. We only use it for washing and other sanitation stuff and the rest of them. So, but Lagos State really, if you ask me as a person, I will tell you we still need more to be improved in the area of water because many houses lack water.
Water is life. We drink water, we use water for bathing, we use water for cooking, we use water for washing. And once we have limited supply of water, the good sanitation that the medicals preach for good living may be compromised. So water plays a good role in sanitation and also in keeping us healthy.
Access to clean water poses sanitation challenges aggravated by indiscriminate disposal of waste, which sometimes ends in different water channels. The health implications are there, and even lives are lost to waterborne diseases and ailments. Where public water infrastructure cannot support a rapidly growing population like that of Nigeria, individuals resort to self-help even as they look up to the government for intervention. Clean water is of paramount commercial significance to the economy as it underpins diverse sectors and sustains essential economic activities. Industries such as agriculture, manufacturing, and energy production rely heavily on abundant supplies of clean water to operate effectively and produce goods and services.
Majorly, sometimes I have had cause to work on the highland here. You understand? And then if you go to the interior, majority of the buildings there, you know, they are not, they don't have access. There are toilets, but the availability of water is limited. So majorly, if you go to walk into any bank, majorly they lock their toilet. They will just tell you the toilets are not available. And it's quite understandable because they also have to source for the water to do and all that. Where I was working, we usually buy water from all these abukis that come to sell. So that's just it. So those are the difficulties, you know, there is no, the access to water is limited. So they only want the place to be messed up. So that's just it. So they just limit the number of people that goes in there. So that's just it.
The significance of clean water to tourism and hospitality industry is huge, as the industry thrives on attractive destinations with pristine water bodies. Thus, safeguarding clean water sources and promoting responsible water management is not only to protect the environment, but also drives economic growth and resilience in the face of an ever-changing world. Grace Komalafe, Souq News.
Many thanks, Grace, for that report. Access to clean water is a fundamental right, and it is a resource that impacts greatly on different aspects of life. But sadly, not everyone has access to clean water in Nigeria and Africa. To talk about this, we have Ara Leonard, who is an environmental and water resource planner. Is also a development communications expert. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm very sure that you have access to clean water, and the reason I'm sure is because I can guess from where you live that in that area, at least there is access to clean water. But not everyone is opportune to be in certain areas where either through private effort or through government effort, they have access to clean water. This is a challenge for a lot of areas in Nigeria. Why is it a problem to have access to clean water?
The main thing, let me first say that in Nigeria, let's be frank, irrespective of where you live, whether those who live at Banana Island, which other place we have, those of us that live in Abuja or wherever, access to clean water is a problem everywhere. Everywhere. And it will shock you to find out that it's even worse in some of these new estates, these new eyebrow estates. It will really shock you. And the main thing has to do with management. That's the main issue. In Nigeria, we don't have the problem of availability of water. Currently now, during this rainy season now, some people in Lekki can't even come out. It means there's water everywhere, you know. But to get that one to drink, you need to do something to it. So when we have water everywhere, what do you do with it? How do you manage it? How do you make it available? So that's a management problem, and which is a governance problem. So when management structures are put in place, you are able to harness this abundance of water that we have in Nigeria so that everybody can have it. So once again, irrespective, everywhere, there's a problem. And the reason is that you as an individual, it is your responsibility now, which is not supposed to be the case, to source for that water. But whereas there's supposed to be a management system that makes water available, then you, with your eyebrow, whatever, pay for that service to get to you. But now you can't even you can't even find that avenue where that water is made available for you to even pay to get it. So you have to go the extra mile to make that water available by drilling boreholes or whatever. And you see the contamination in a place like Lagos, for instance. So how much effort, with all the money you have, how much effort do you think you put in place to be able to purify that water and get it?
Okay, now let's look at this lack of access to clean water from the angle of development, okay? Of course, it has economic implications and developmental implications. If you don't have access as a people or as a country to clean water, what are these developmental implications?
First of all, let's look at human capital development, which is key, which is something we don't really take seriously in Nigeria. For instance, I'm supposed to be a guest here, right? If I don't have good water to drink this morning and I get dehydrated, I might not even be able to get here. I might not even be able to speak properly. So first of all, the human beings that you need to make a productive economy, to work in offices, to think properly. Many people are walking about, they are not thinking properly straight, and you wouldn't know that it's lack of water that is causing it. You don't have that. So in terms of human capital development, first of all, that is the strongest effect of lack of access to water. What about industry? And they say water is life. I belong to a group, it's called Nigerian Environmental Study Action Team. It's called NEST. It's one of the foremost environment NGO in Nigeria. There's a book published there called Nigeria's Threatened Environment. And one of the key factors is water. That's the thing. You can't, without proper water, you can't do anything. A lot of industries function based on water. Even your car. You don't have water in your car. You understand? So you can imagine that. Now, these are things, agric, industries, you name it. Then the human body, which we talked about before, to even walk in those places. And then look at it. Now, when we talk about industries also, because sometimes we think that industries do not need refined water or purified water. We think industries, any wastewater you just throw there, industries can use. Is it true? What the beverages you drink, what are they made with? Those water has to be purified. So domestic water consumption has gone beyond the level of the purified water you take at home, and has gone to the level of even purified water that are needed for industry purposes. Even let's look at even these young people who sell what you call pure water, on the streets. You understand? They have to get that water, and you see that thing is a lifesaver when you're in Lagos traffic, even though we don't have traffic too much now because of the fuel price increase. But when you're there, these are lifesavers for you, and then they're also means of income for a lot of people.
Yeah. Let's look at the role the environment plays in making access to clean water possible. We find that a lot of water sources are being contaminated. In the olden days, people living close to streams could fetch from the streams and they even drink from the streams. But if you go check some of those streams today, they are heavily contaminated. How do we control that?
Let me also say that olden days people, I don't know how they do it. Maybe their immune system is at another level. Yeah, because it's the same streams they use for
washing,
everything, and they still drink from there. But it will surprise you to know that they also have local purification means. They either let the water to settle, they have some things they use to purify water. So water purification has been there since forever. Okay, but these days we find out that even when you try to purify water, it becomes very difficult. And that has to do with certain chemicals that end up reacting with water. In the olden days, what reacts to the water are mainly natural organic things which could, just disintegrate on their integrate on their own. But these days you have chemicals, you have plastic that takes millions of years to disintegrate. You have lead, which is very, very dangerous, and that is one of the biggest problems with water contamination in Nigeria. So you have industries all over the place. Now, you don't have proper sewage system that could channel industrial waste to safe areas. It's not there. You have the issue of urbanization. There's pressure on land. Everybody needs a house to stay. Now you have estates. It's one of the biggest business now, springing up all over the places. Nobody is thinking how that area, sanitation in that area will be taken into consideration. Where are the sewage channels? Where are those things going to? If you go to Igomu, near the National Theatre area. If they drop you in that place, I don't think you will survive. Because that's virtually a waste dump. You see how black and thick the water there is. Where are these things channeled to? And there are loads of houses around. And funny enough, just opposite is where you have the Water Corporation building. You get it. Popular Victor Osimhen is from a place called Olusosun, where you have the largest dump site. Have you seen the number of houses around there? Now, because our public water system is not working properly, people have to drill individual boreholes. With each borehole you drill, it cracks the rock. And then you have your Souq, your sewage system around there. It seeps in. So the more boreholes people drill, the more contaminated the water gets. But if you have an estate, for instance, and you have a single borehole system in that estate and everybody connects to it, you reduce all that. If you have proper planning where you have industries, you take away residential buildings from there. Or if you have industries and you know what type of industries, you don't situate a beverage industry close to an industry that does maybe something like fertilizer and things like that, and they're using the same water and, you know, things like that. So it's about management and planning. You know, once that is done, then I think we'll be able to correct a lot of these things.
Okay, I'm glad you spoke about planning, because I was about asking you about water resource management and planning in this part of the world. There was a time when you would open your tap in your neighborhood and water would just run, and you can actually drink from the tap, but not any longer. What have you today? You have sachet water sellers, packet bottle water sellers, and so on and so forth. We have come to that point in our history, but then, if we did not plan and we got here, can we still make any other plan that can make the future better for those that are coming?
Yes.
What plans exactly? Now we have a population issue, like you said. How do we plan for the future?
It will shock you that the plan is already there. The problem in Nigeria is always implementation. We've always had water resources plan. I did my project way back in the 90s, both my BSc, my MSc, and they were both on domestic water consumption. Wow. And it will surprise you to know the kind of plan that we've had. I moved into Abuja in 1990. In 1990, Abuja was known to have the cleanest tap water in the world. Go check it.
Wow.
Everything was planned. So we have it there. University of Lagos did the consultancy, the lecturers, and we had the best in Nigeria. Then you had names like Professor Oyebande and co. University of Lagos did the consultancy for the Lagos State Mega Water Resources Plan, which was perhaps one of the biggest and best in Africa. But the problem has been implementation. So those plans are there. So what someone like me would advise the government to do is go back to those plans and execute it. And then these development issues are not singular. They are multi-sectoral issues. So what we have in governance now is that now ministers are being screened. When a minister comes in, he thinks of his ministry alone and he thinks, oh, what will I do, what will I do? And that's where you have clashes between agencies. But when they see how these things link to each other, you cannot have water resources planning without combining it with your urban development planning. Now, what you have is development control people, the urban planning, the, what do they call it, works and housing. They just open areas and things like that. They don't plan for water. You also will not be able to do that without your ministries of industry, where industries are situated. What about transport? Do they build roads without providing proper drainage systems there? You know, what about the Ministry of Forestry? With each tree you cut, you have a problem with water supply. Do we know that?
What is the relationship with felling tree and reducing access to water?
First of all, those trees you fell, one, those trees are the trees that, surprisingly, you don't know, that purify the soil. That is one. Two, the trees guard against erosion. When the soil is washed off, what do you think would happen? Anything can go in there. There are just so many, even issues around flooding. Do you know that flooding contaminates clean water?
Yes.
For instance, if you take the strip along the Babish, Victoria Island area, when we were small, we had loads of coconut trees there. Just take your Google map now, the whole ocean area, everything has been knocked off. Now you have Atlantic has been made. Now water has been diverted to, because water would always find its level, it's been diverted to Lekki. There is now flooding, which each flood, clean water is contaminated. And all these are things that trees could save. What about the one talking about the atmospheric one? You want to do rain harvesting. Not so. And now the atmosphere is polluted. Trees absorb all your carbon dioxide, your carbon monoxide, and all that from the atmosphere. So right now, in some places like Port Harcourt, it's difficult to harvest rain because what you have there is acid coming in, because it used to be Garden City. They've cut down all the trees, and you have the refinery flare there. So trees, that's why the US keeps on hammering the countries around the Amazon. And in fact, there are some countries that the developed world pay just to ensure that they don't cut trees, so that at least they could enjoy in the US. So it's very important.
We have corporate social responsibility of some companies, and you find that in rural areas particularly, them providing maybe one borehole or the other. But it doesn't seem enough, because when it works for maybe the way the borehole is constructed, or the type of borehole, when it works for maybe a short while, it stops working, perhaps due to power not being available for it, or something just goes wrong. So how do we encourage, or what mechanism should be in place that when companies are thinking of water projects, they are implementing the ones that is sustainable over a long period of time?
I think the one of the other speaker, Dr. Edaosa, talked about the fact that things in Nigeria are even over-regulated. When you talk about laws, we have them. Now, take in the Niger Delta, for instance, the oil company, every single oil company pays a certain amount for such infrastructure to be put in that community. Is there in our law, and they pay that. But they pay to the government. Does the government do it? But I've seen a lot of companies do that. They've provided such things. Now, when the companies provide that, it is now the job of the host community, and that is why I say it's a multi-sectoral thing. Now, such kind of amenities, the way Abuja was originally designed, we had neighborhood centers. All that had changed. So facilities such like that, common facilities in such places, are to be made such that they are controlled by that local community. So if, for instance, someone goes and destroys, like somewhere in Delta State, where I'm from, 2 administrations ago, they put taps in every street. You will see after maybe 4 houses, you see a tap. In the night, the residents went there and they destroyed it. Why? Because some people were making money by selling boiled water. You understand? So you have to involve the community. And then for companies that are not that big, that have to pay such things, that they understand that, look, we have this corporate social responsibility that we have to do. We have to provide water to that community, electricity to that community, like those oil companies did in the Niger Delta then. Like now, we have smaller companies in Lagos here that they just come to an area and they do everything they like, and they are not even aware that this is there. The government that is aware does not follow up. So before you give a company license to operate in a place, such things have to be done. You put it as a priority, and it's part of the, like now in environment, we have what we call environmental impact assessment, which is supposed to be done before any company is given approval to start. Now, you also need to add provision of since we know that government can't do everything now, provision of electricity, water supply to that community, and access road. These 3 things, the government needs to add it. Now, if they do that, if you locate close to any company, you would enjoy. Like in Jos, there was a part of Jos where you had this NISCO company that everybody there was enjoying 24 hours electricity just because of that company, because the company was providing it. If you go to the Niger Delta, the first Ijo town in the Niger Delta got connected to the national grid electricity in 1999. And that is when they started having power problems. Because before then, all the companies would produce, would do what they call power turbine. They would put water facilities and everything. But the law in Nigeria says when you get connected to the national grid, any power generated goes to the center. And then, and that all ended. But if we check some of all these laws and change it, so if now we have the refinery coming up at Lekki, everybody living around that area must have constant electricity, water supply. So if you put that in the laws, that the things you need to check before any company is allowed to start, I'm telling you, all that will be taken care of. Then government can face the areas where such companies are not located.
All right. It was quite sad when you said it earlier on that in a particular community, people gather together at night to destroy what was done earlier. And communities are meant to self-help, not to self-destruct. Yeah. Now, this speaks to one key issue, development communication. And incidentally, you are an expert in that field. What is the role of development communication in, promoting communal gathering of effort towards providing good water, really?
You see, one issue in Nigeria is education. And when we say education, it's not about education. People are well educated in Nigeria. When doing my project in the 90s in domestic water consumption in Delta states, one of the key things we checked was education level of the people. And as at that time, in that community, Efrun in Delta State, which is not as developed as it is now, the education level was over 70%. Yes, so we are well educated. But the kind of education that we don't have is the education of the effect of our actions. The greatest problem to domestic water consumption world over is not climate change that people talk about. It is our own human actions. There are little things we do, and that is where the media comes in. So with development communication, what we do is we try to show you the little things you can do within your little space, not looking at the federal government there in Abuja or even your state government. Local governments now don't even exist, so we don't really look at them. But what can I do as Aro Leonard to solve this problem? I'll give you an example. You're building a house, or you have your house, and you don't do the plumbing properly. You have leakages. Now, one of the ways to ensure conservation of water, effective water use, is through metering. We are talking about meters for electricity. Nobody's talking about meters for water. You have people wasting water in houses where they have the knowledge, the money, everything to fix the pipes. You have a broken pipe in front of your house, you say it belongs to government, and you won't fix it. And you see leakages all over the place. As the water is leaking, that's how contamination also enters through that place. You have your bathroom, your shower. What kind of showers do you use? Do you use the ones that will just open and just splash, or your tap, where some tap will come with a lot of pressure?
Yes.
So there are things they call aerators, faucet aerators. You know what a faucet is? Your taps. You put aerators, they help the waters come out straight so they don't splash and waste. Those are very little things. How do you dispose your waste? When rain falls, do you have a tank somewhere that you could collect rainwater? Everybody's now buying water. I grew up in Lagos. I was born and bred in Lagos. We didn't used to do that. When it rains, we have our tanks out there. We harvest rainwater. So there are so many ways we can look at it individually. Let's not just look at it from the part of government alone. What little things can we do? And that's where the media comes in to tell people those little. I say, oh, really? Have you checked your so today? Did you lock your tap before you leave your home? Things like that.
As crucial as access to clean water is to sustainable development, what happens when this issue of water scarcity is not addressed, even as we have a growing population?
We talked about it a little bit earlier on. And the most important one for me, honestly, is that human capital development. You see a lot of people walking in the street in the afternoon, walking. They can't think properly. They are dehydrated because they don't even have enough money to even buy your so-called pure water to drink. So they can't think properly. Today, we see a lot of people age 45. Once they get to 45, you just see people drop dead. Without water, your blood can't work very well. We all know that over 70% of your body is made up of water. Without water, your body can't function. Without water, you can't even speak. If I don't drink water today, I can't speak properly. So the human capital development part, that is the most important. And we need to know how, when you invest in the health of your people, the well-being of your people, how it leads to economic growth, reduces wastage. We'll work longer hours, we won't spend money in hospital, we'll be able to use our money to do other things. We won't get angry always. You know.
Okay. On a very last note, Mr. Leonard, how can we tap into the possibilities of technology to solve the challenge of water resource management as briefly as possible, because we're out of time, really?
Yeah. Let's start with the basic technology. Technology you need, for instance, there are technologies you could use to detect leakages. For instance, if the water system is computerized, just by sitting in your office, you identify where there's a leakage, and then you immediately go there and you solve it. But basic home technology is what we need to use. More effective sewage systems, your flushing systems, your showers, your faucet aerators, your knobs that you could fix, things like that. Those basic technology are things we should look at as individuals at home, while the government should look at computerized water system management technology. Yeah.
All right, that's it on the discussion on access to clean water. Now, access to clean water doesn't stop at the domestic level. For those who do it as business, ensure that it's clean water. If you have gotten water, then the water should be purified and clean enough for consumption, so that those who are buying know that, of course, they are accessing very clean water. Thank you very much, Ari Leonard, for being with us on this discussion.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Let's go to break, and then we'll turn to another matter. It's the early exchange.
fresh fruit business is a lucrative one, grossing about $551.1 billion globally in 2021, and it is expected to expand more. In Nigeria, a report shows that one could start a business with as little as 50,000 naira, with huge returns on the investment. With the increase in the global demand for ripe fruits because of its visual appeal and perceived benefit, some fruit vendors have resorted to using unhealthy and toxic chemicals like calcium carbide to speed up and induce unusually uniform ripening. Nigerians are quite aware of the threat this practice poses to their health, and they are not keeping quiet about it.
It's bad for the health because it's not natural. There's nothing like naturality there. So normally you are supposed to eat your fruits ripened naturally. It has a lot of complications to one's digestive system, because I remember I once took this and I was having serious heartburn and purging at the same time. It was not funny at all. So it's not the best. It's also always occur in banana, mango. It's not the best at all.
Actually, I'm not a doctor, but I'm a coach. But I know eating a carbide food with ripened one is not good for me. So I believe in natural fruits.
I think one can ripen food naturally. That's the natural way. For me, I believe it's the safest way and the healthy way to ripen food.
You can't compare anything natural with all this artificial method of so it's not work that way. So I believe in natural.
Studies show that the use of calcium carbide is found to affect the neurological system by inducing prolonged hypoxia, amongst other side effects, and some respondents share their opinions.
Yeah, sure, it is. It slows your immune system. Like, it's not good for you because of the things induced in it to make you ripe on, like, before it's the natural period is supposed to get ripe. So it actually affects the system.
Most people, the health issues they are facing now sometimes is as a result of what they eat. So it has a very negative effect. But coming out, enlightening people, telling them, educating them about it, at least that will actually reduce the risks.
The health benefits in the regular eating of fresh fruits cannot be overemphasized. However, the drive to make more money in a short time should not outweigh the regard for the health and well-being of the people. Juvi Ofiene, Souq News.
I've always wanted to ask a question. The fruit that Eve served Adam, the forbidden fruit in Eden, how ripe was it? Question one. Question two, was the ripening natural or artificial? Was it facilitated by chemicals? Well, we were not there. And so I probably will not get an answer. Maybe when we get to the other side of existence, I'll be able to ask these questions. But then we are here now and we're witnessing a particular practice that is unhealthy. You see unusually ripe banana fruits or mango fruits and you are moved by what you see. And for those of us who like to eat fruits, it's always a temptation. But hey, be careful. That report there just said that you might be eating what has been induced with calcium carbide. That is a very dangerous chemical. So today we are talking about artificial fruit ripening, inducing fruit ripening, the health implications and the way forward. But before we go to our guest, like you saw the introduction there, Blessing, what was the color of the fruit? Said Adam.
Well, I can't tell the color of the fruit, but two questions you asked earlier, I think I can answer them. Okay. One, was the fruit ripe? I think it was ripe for it to be so tempting that Adam couldn't resist it. Now, was it, how did Eve get the fruit? Now, at that time, it was just two of them. So the competition for fruit wasn't there. And so I believe there were so many other trees. So all she needed to do was just pluck one that was very ripe and gave it to Adam. And I'm sure it must have tasted very well, because you can't compare the taste of a naturally ripened fruit to that of that is induced by carbide.
Okay, we have with us, you've seen him on the white shirt. Yes, we have with us Dr. Emmanuel Abosin, who is the Division of Innovation Strategist and CEO of Trema Agro Services Limited. He is equally the Director of Pan-African Institute of Agribusiness Management. Welcome on board, Doctor.
Thank you so much.
You heard it all.
Yes.
How bad is it? Artificial ripening of fruits.
Actually, it's very bad because you are trying to force something that is not matured to be matured fast because of maybe demand in the market, and also maybe for post-harvest protection to prevent post-harvest loss. And you are releasing chemicals to induce these fruits to make them ripe, and you're going to cause imbalance to the fruit first of all, and also to those people who are going to be consuming them. So business is not just about you making profit. It's also, especially for food, it's also about the health of your consumers. So I would say it's quite bad. It's health bad. Look at the health implications, and also look at the environmental hazards that it's around this process of ripening fruit.
We don't really know how this practice came about, but we just discovered that fruits were induced to get ripe by the use of carbide. There may be other ways of ripening fruit or other agents through which fruit can be induced to become ripe, but the common one is carbide. Yeah. Are there natural ways to ripen fruits? Because I know the reasons farmers or sellers of fruits ripen their fruits is because they want to make quick sales and then go over to the markets or to the farm to purchase another. Are there natural ways to have this happen?
Definitely, there are natural ways to ripen fruits, which is first of all the natural way of allowing the fruits to mature itself. Then also we have the controlled atmosphere, where you allow you reduce oxygen, increase carbon dioxide for the fruits to ripen, and also storage. Atmosphere, the storage facilities. It's just that sometimes it takes time. The process, and because of demand in the market. So we're talking about demand. Just like your answer to his question, to his first question, like when it was Adam and Eve, the demand was not there. So we're talking about billions of people and want to eat fruits, and fruit is something even doctors encourage you to take because of health, and so because of the demand. That's why they are trying to induce it. But there are natural ways, though it takes time. And even there are also artificial ways that are healthy, but it is more expensive compared to calcium carbide.
Can we really have uniformly ripe fruits by the natural means? You must have seen those bananas, right?
Yes.
No patch, no dark spot.
Yeah.
Uniformly yellow.
Yeah.
Can we do that naturally, really?
Naturally, yes.
How, if I may ask?
Okay, we need to understand life cycle of this product. And the reason why it's even a big challenge in Nigeria or developing countries, Nigeria should not be, we should not be saying Nigeria is a developing country. If not because of our leadership conditions. Okay. Nigeria is big enough to be a developed country. Yeah, because of education. It takes education to understand what quantity of this substance to add to make it healthy for consumption. So because we don't have that, that is why we are talking about the implications in terms of health. So for us to have a uniform ripe plantain naturally, we need to understand, okay, how many, what time period do I need to store them in a particular controlled atmosphere for me to have this particular result?
Okay.
Yes. What quantity?
Okay, what role will food security play in reducing the need to force the ripening of fruits? If we have, let's say, oranges in large quantity in and out of season, and we have them properly stored, will it in any way reduce the need to force the ripening of fruits? Okay,
if there is supply, if our supply is more than the demand, definitely there will be no need because there is supply. But because there's no supply, because the supply is not meeting up with the demand, and that's why we have what we have at the moment. So I will say the role the food agency had to play is for more production, and also understanding cycles of production. For example, when I came in, I was looking at I was watching some of the parts of your show, and I saw Rwanda. So what Rwanda is doing at the moment is irrigation farming. So for every season, there's always fresh fruits to eat. There's only fresh crops. So if we can embed that in Nigeria, where we have cycles, different cycles, so it will be able to meet up with demand. So because some of these fruits are seasonal. So during, if you see very well, during the season of, let's say banana, mango, you see them surplus. So when they're out of season, we need what we have induced these chemicals into in order to preserve them for out of season, for us to be able to have what to eat. And now this is where the challenge is, because we need them and they are not available.
Okay, you as an agri-management consultant, so to speak, let's speak about erosion of consumer trust in ripe fruits. By the reason of this artificial inducement. How does this erode consumer trust and confidence in this?
Okay, when something is not healthy, you don't want to buy it. Like everybody wants something healthy. Everybody wants something that will not cause them problems. It's like you're using your money to go and buy problems for yourself. So one of the things we can only do is to make sure that what we're giving out is healthy enough for consumers to eat. And consumers to be able to trust that yes, the process is good and also safe for them, because it's about food safety. When we have NAFDAC, it's all about food safety. We want to protect the people. We want people to be healthy. We don't want them to use their money to buy their own problem, like you're using your own money to buy your own death. So we need to keep enhancing the fact that the customers are our primary targets. Well, who are we doing them for? The customers. Now, for what? For them to be healthy. So we should not be the one to cause them problem when they want something good.
Still talking about the issue of trust. Now, because there is this trust for the local fruit sellers or local fruit farmers, we find that people are now turning to fruits from other countries, imported fruits. Do we even have reasons to be concerned about the quality of those too?
Oh, yeah, it's like Africa, one of the big challenges we have is game of perception. The business is about perception. So because it's coming outside from the country, we feel that it's safe. Then is it necessarily true? It's not 100% true, because we don't even understand the process for them to ripen the fruits and get them to us. And then because we don't believe or trust ourselves, it's becoming a challenge. And again, the policies, let's say the regulators at all of this gate, are they actually doing the proper check? Do we have the technology to be able to ensure that these fruits are also safe? So the fact that it's coming from outside the country does not mean it's safe even for our country. And then we need to also build a trust for our local vendors and our local farmers to reduce exportation, especially for fruits. It's not necessary.
Okay, you were introduced as a diffusion of innovation strategist. Over time, you must have noticed probably a number of innovations that have diffused into the country from maybe better informed or better technically more endowed parts of the world. Let's talk about fruit management. How much of innovation has diffused down here, and how much more do we still need, based on your own experience?
Okay, we've had so much. In fact, most of the technology we have in Africa, especially in Nigeria, are imported. We don't. We have less of our own, and with what we have so far, I think we still need more. We need more because the regulatory, especially at the regulatory gates, so that we don't just bring in whatever we want to bring in. Okay, let's say, for example, with all due respect to my country, Nigeria, okay, so we got to the Murtala International Airport, and the checks were not done with using technology. They just open your bag, they want to see what you... I brought in some fruits, passion fruits. Yeah, so the check was not technologically driven, it was manually driven. And it's not, I will not say it was, for me, even though because I'm a Nigerian, I don't think it was properly done. So we need more. And when we say we need more, especially at the gate, the regulatory gates.
Okay, now since people are being wary of fruit consumption, ordinarily doctors would advise you to take more fruits, vegetables, because of the kind of minerals and vitamins they supply our body with, and they say you're what you eat, so people want to complement whatever diet they're on with taking fruits and vegetables. But when there is fear for those things, and it's like you don't even know the person selling fruits, how they ripen their fruit. You can't trust one fruit seller to the other. So how does that impact on your business?
Okay. Business you need customers. Now, when customers are not coming to buy, there's no business. So it's going to reduce, first of all, how you sell. It's going to reduce how you make profit. Because if there's no sales at the first place, there's no profit. And because of this fear, people are not coming to buy. So you have your product with you, and you're not selling it. And again, when we even talk about export, until it's even safe, you cannot even export them. Because when you're going to export this product, you are talking about a different ball game. You're talking about different regulations, licensing that you need to get, and all of that. So, and what we're even trying to, well, I think the government of Nigeria currently is trying to even encourage is even exportation. And one of the things we have to export is our agri-produce. So we need to start looking at how we can make this food safe and how to promote the natural way of fruits being ripened so that we can gain back the consumers' trust. Just like you said, the doctors advise you to take fruits. In fact, my doctor asked me not to take sugar again. I can only take sugar that are from natural fruits. Then you are going to now get, you want to go and get these fruits. And these fruits are artificially induced. And it also increases some of, the calcium carbide, increases the level of sugar in
your system,
in the fruit.
The fruit, okay.
You understand? And when you consume them, you're taking more sugar that you were advised not to take. So if our vendors understand these things, and they can let us get and can get consumers the natural ripened fruit, it will increase sales. And when you increase sales, you're also going to increase your profit.
Okay, there is a particular dilemma here for any teacher. If you bring in a teacher here now to instruct us on how to identify which fruits are naturally ripened and which ones are artificially induced, that would be like a dilemma. How do we, because we can't say people should not eat fruits again.
Definitely.
And we can't say they should latch on to just green bananas and they are not appealing anyway.
Yeah.
How do we, if you can help, really, how do we begin to, how are we able to differentiate between, oh, this fruit is naturally ripened and this is artificially ripened without laboratory tests that we don't have access to in the first place?
Yeah, I think for that, food agencies like NAFDAC, Consumer Food Protection had to come in to help. And I think the director, the national director, that is for Consumer Protection, President Tunde Rukera, has been doing well in his angle. So we just need to increase their effort, because first of all, it's something, except you test them, you not know the difference. Because the test differs. And again, it's not what you can use your site to, like, okay, this is induced, this is natural ripening. So we need NAFDAC to be able to help.
To clamp down.
Yes, to clamp down.
To clamp down, we need NAFDAC to clamp down on people that are involved in this
process. Yes.
Really, okay.
Yeah. Then because the consumer, sometimes in fact, when we are in the market, sometimes we want to buy in haste. And you are looking at, you can give me this at this amount. If you're okay, I'm going to go to the next person and all of that. So if at the gate, vendors, especially then again, if possible, educating the vendors. Education in Nigeria is like one-sided. So these vendors need a level of education. The terminology, the slangs, this is not the kill Africa. It's not absolutely true. In fact, that is why I think we take some of these things for granted, because we feel like no matter what happened, an African person is not going to die. The gene of a black man is strong. But so if the farmers can be adequately trained, and that is one of the things we're trying to do. That is what we're doing at Pan-African Institute of Agribusiness Management, bringing farmers. And our last section was with some farmers association in Kigali, where we brought them to make them understand that you can do business and make profit, and also concern about the safety of the consumers. And one of the reasons why it's quite easier for us in Kigali is the fact that the government, if there's a policy, the government sees it through. They're not like Nigeria. In fact, jokingly, there was a day we were talking to my friends, say if it was Nigeria, so they gave us some policies, like these are the guidelines for our business. I was like, if it was Nigeria, now you just look for someone with a blue envelope or with a brown envelope, the process is shortened. So we need to also know that these are these things are important. Educating the vendors, and these vendors are not educated. They cannot speak. They are not they cannot literate, right? So we need to also do programs that can communicate with them in their local languages.
Okay. So how does the artificial ripening of fruits increase wastage along the supply chain and even for the end consumer?
Okay, but basically, it prevents post-harvest loss. You know, everything that has advantages has disadvantages, right? So for the post-harvest, in terms of chemical-induced product, it's just to reduce their, first of all, them not getting spoiled on time. And because of the logistics, you know, we have issues with logistics in Africa. So we're talking about moving products from Ilorin, for example, to Abuja, and then you get somewhere, Lokoja, where there's bad road, and your vehicle is knocked down. So you're there for a period of days. So if we can, first of all, I think we need to look at logistics. Then we look at the cycle. It's going to, from this point to this point, how long will it take? Can we shorten this process? If those processes can be shortened, it is going to go a long way.
Okay, my question actually is, how does artificial fruit ripening contribute to food wastage?
Okay, yeah.
Particularly around the supply chain, but you've talked about logistics, so let's look at its contribution to food wastage.
Okay, it's, like I said, it actually reduces food wastage.
When you artificially ripen fruits.
Right.
Okay.
All right, we really can't take more question on that. Thank you very much, Dr. Emmanuel Abusin, the CEO of Trema Agro Services Limited. It's been a wonderful time with you in the studios. Before I sign out on the show today, let me just tell you, they talk, this is not to kill Africans. It's not true. Africans die of diseases. And as an African boy, you don't have 7 lives. You have just 1 life, just as a European has or a Chinese has. Only 1 life you have. Let us protect it. So our vendors, it's not just about profit making. It's about commitment to safety of your fellow human beings, because what goes round comes round. And that is the show, and that's how I sign out today. My name is Ayo Jimmy. Blessing.
Yeah, you may want to think about maybe the advantage that it reduces food wastage, but what if the person who would consume the food you're trying to save dies because you have just forcefully or artificially ripened fruit? So think about the next person. You do not want blood money in your hands because you want to make quick gains. And I'm blessed today to thank you for being with us on the show. Tomorrow, 7 a.m. is another time.